Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays today with Heba Ashour. Welcome Heba.
Welcome everybody.
Thank you. We start with the song. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Heba Ashour. Absolutely wonderful to have you here. And today we're talking about how international image, video and search works. I think we'll spread it out a little bit more than just international, but I'm not sure we'll have all the time we need. I've got boatloads of questions already. Really interested what you've got to say. Before we start, a couple of things. Number one is your brand SERP. This is your brand SERP on Bing, of course. Seeing as you are from Bing, you're the multimedia team lead at Bing. That looks pretty good. You've got a lovely knowledge panel. What I do see with Bing is that knowledge panels are actually really, really good in general. And there tend to be more of them than there are on Google. So I was terribly pleased to find that. And then I found you in Google Scholar, and you were looking at collaborative forums and discussion posts. What is it, 13 years ago?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was a previous life at Bing?
Well, it wasn't a Bing. It was a Microsoft, but not a Bing. But yeah, that was a long time ago.
Right, and that could have been an incredible chat about kind of how you evaluate user comments and spam and you know, how honest they are and are they actually relevant and valuable. That must have been a massive problem back then.
It was like, imagine we were working on that like more than 10 years ago. So we were nowhere near where we're at today with the amount of technology that we have for assessing, text and understanding kind of how to say semantics behind the text. So it was a very interesting problem. I had so much fun working on it, and we did a few publications that were really good at the time.
Right, you say fun. I just think frustrating, to be honest. I mean, with all the spam, I would have just got really frustrated and annoyed.
But I mean, we were trying to solve a real problem, right? Like
Yes.
how can you sift through all of this content and really find, the valuable things? And there were so many applications for something like that in education. I mean, in general entertainment, to name a few. But there were so many applications and so many, goodness out of the work that we were doing. So it was fun in that sense.
Brilliant. That's a wonderful, actually. I love that. Really quickly, I'm just going to do my little video at the beginning. Join me every week on Kalicube Tuesdays. Here are some of the guests we've had. The smartest people in marketing talk with me. Today's episode is produced in partnership with WordLift, who are an amazing AI tool. They do the heavy lifting for you. And today's headline sponsor is Ahrefs, who are absolutely awesome, and they have everything you need to rank higher and get more traffic. Now, back to our topic. That was a really nice cut because we weren't supposed to be talking about user-generated content. We're supposed to be talking about image and video. And one thing I really wanted to know, just to start off, is you talk about the fact that there's a big shift away from text towards image and video. Is it a shift away, or is it in addition to? And to what extent is that happening?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question. I have to say it's in addition to, because we're not seeing like a decline in overall search, so to speak. So search is like text search is here and it's here to stay. And people are using it like very, very heavily every day, more than the previous day. But we're seeing that the patterns and the way that people are searching is becoming, and the expectation for what they want to see is becoming more and more visual, in the sense that, with people's lifestyles becoming busier and the way that they're consuming information changing, there seems to be like a bigger interest in anything that is more kind of overall kind of media related. So either kind of expressing things through imagery or expressing them in video, rather than just heavy text that people have to spend a lot of time reading through.
Right. I mean, which is more natural for human beings. You said an image speaks 1,000 words. And is it a question of, I mean, because human beings have always been like that. Is it a question of bandwidth, or is it a question of your technology is enabling it to happen? And the more it happens, the more we expect it to happen.
I think it's a combination of both, because, I mean, as you mentioned, like people from the old age, like they drew and they expressed themselves through drawing and through kind of media, like visual representations.
Yeah.
And before, because of like technology limitations, because of bandwidth limitations, that was not possible. But now, since technology is moving in this direction, it's becoming cheaper, data is becoming cheaper, all of that. So I think we're becoming more and more visual again, and that's the phenomenon that we're seeing, so to speak.
Right. I mean, from a consumer perspective, data is pretty much free. I mean, I remember the days when you would count your kilobytes and then your megabytes, and now it's gigabytes, and it seems that it's limitless. I mean, that isn't the case.
Right. But I mean, and speed is also increasing quite a bit. Like before, to watch a video, it was like, I'm speaking 10 years ago, it was painful and it would buffer and it would, stop, and you didn't want to do that. So text was easier to consume. But now that's not the case. These limitations don't exist anymore. That's not the case. So people are getting more and more, the media that they like and the way that they want to consume it. And that's what they're expecting. And that's what we need to give them.
Right. Yeah, I started off with Flash in 1998, where we were using a 14K modem, and we had to stream across a 14K modem, and we were doing it. But I think kind of my head is still stuck somewhere around there, and I'm still amazed when I click on a video and it actually just plays.
Right.
And the other question is, you're talking about languages and international. To what extent does it vary internationally, and what extent does it vary in terms of language, in terms of that image and video usage?
So I have to say it doesn't vary that much. Like it only depends on the availability of, I guess, bandwidth and availability of technology in that location, and availability of smart devices. So long as the infrastructure is available, we see quite similar patterns in terms of search. It differs like from one language to the other. Maybe in like when folks are searching in one language, they search more videos because of maybe I don't know, the film in the movie industry is very developed, and so that's what people are interested in and what they want to consume. Versus in another place where that's not the case, so they search maybe more images and so on and so forth. But in general, we see quite similar patterns, so long as the infrastructure is there.
Right, okay. And next question is about the indexing. You use the same index as everybody else at Bing, in that you're using Fabrice Cannel's massive index. And he talks about annotations. To what extent are his annotations important to how you actually manage to extract that first chunk of results before you do the ranking and then the re-ranking?
Great question again. So we're all like based off of like one big index, which is what Fabrice kind of provides for all of us. But the key thing is we don't stop there, because we build upon what we have available in the web index, and then we have to also extract and work off of things that are specific to multimedia, or like that we need to power like a multimedia rich experience. So we get like the web page information and the annotations that are available at the page level, but then we need to extract the images themselves, and we need to kind of start to do more intelligence and extract more intelligence from the images or from the videos related to kind of for example, the images. We need to run models to try to understand what is the content that is actually inside the image. The description, the text description around the image, of course, is important, but like we're getting more developed than that, in the sense that we need to understand what the image is about and what are different ways to represent the content of this image. First, like in a single language, but then we need to also kind of represent that knowledge in 100 plus languages, so that we can match this image to any kind of user who's searching for that particular relevant content as such.
Right. And is that the rank that you talk about? Bringing that idea to
the multi-modal kind of semantic, like using multi-modal and presenting that into a semantic space, and using all of this information collectively to try to kind of match the query to the document to the image. Basically, these three kind of modalities matched into the same semantic space, and then find the best content that's out there. So and that makes it multilingual by definition, in the sense that you're not actually using language. So the models that we pre-train, we pre-train kind of multilingual models by definition, and that what makes the actual models inherently multilingual. but I mean, you can, I mean, if like deep learning, just like the vanilla deep learning, does not necessarily have to be multilingual as such. It can work off of like a single language representation. Although you represent everything in semantic space, but unless you kind of add in the extra language information, then you can only kind of map one language to semantic space rather than multiple languages to the same semantic space. But the actual, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, when you say semantic space, you mean basically this language agnostic.
The language agnostic kind of, like two-dimensional like vector space that you try to kind of map everything, like either the query or the document or the image in our case. You try to map it to that language agnostic space that's only numbers. So you can think of it as like a two-dimensional space, and you try to map different points to the same location that semantically mean the same thing. But you get to that representation through processing the actual, text as such, or the actual kind of objects or representation of what's in the image. But you need to go that extra mile in doing that multilingual representation so that you can actually do effective kind of international search, so to speak, so that any, like you write kind of Satya Nadella in any language representation, and it would map the same set of documents as such, if that's what you want.
Right. And the vector space for a given semantic term is going to be very similar across all different languages, or it's different and you need to do different mappings?
If you already kind of train a multilingual model, then inherently it becomes similar, because you learn these relationships by like through that kind of embedding, by saying that, by feeding the model kind of multiple language representations of the same kind of semantic or of the same concept. So you say, Satya Nadella written in English, and Satya Nadella written in Russian, and Satya Nadella written in Japanese or Chinese. All of these effectively will map to the same vector space location. And so then you'll know that, all of these map to the same kind of concept.
Right. And then culture, doesn't that throw it a bit of a curveball?
I mean, of course, there are challenges, right? I mean, it seems nice and
simple. If it was too easy.
If it was too easy, it seems nice and simple once you start to do it. But there are things that, that can definitely throw you off. Like, for example, false friends in multiple languages. They look the same, but they mean completely different things, even though the textual representation is the same. But unless you add another culture aspect to it, then you wouldn't know that they mean actually different things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I speak French and English, and false friends, faux amis in French is a terrible, terrible problem. I made a terrible mistake on stage once, translating long tail directly into French, and it's a very rude word, and there was a big kind of tweet laugh at me afterwards. So I can imagine, I felt pretty silly, but obviously the machine, well, I suppose the machine wouldn't feel silly, would it? But you would feel a bit foolish. Can you tell me a little bit, sorry, about the where do language agnostic and language specific aspects help?
Yeah, so we talked about language agnostic things kind of so far, like all of the stuff that we've discussed so far is how we try to kind of be language agnostic as much as possible, and trying to map different concepts to the same sort of representation, which is an image or a video at this point. But then the question that you asked, like very intelligently, is where we actually need to do language specific. We need to add language specific signals so that we understand the actual culture, and we understand where context matters. And we need to kind of preserve the context so that we don't kind of throw users off and give them things that are actually meaningless to them.
Yeah, and how do you get the machine to understand that? Because obviously you don't have your hands in the machine able to tell it, well, actually, that's wrong. Now we'll correct this one by one. You have to do it at this massive scale. I mean, how can you possibly do that? Yeah,
so I mean, like you can intervene at any point by creating kind of specific signals that correct whatever behavior that the machine is trying to learn, right? So you create, how to say, like exceptions that says you're trying to learn, this particular pattern, or you're trying to learn this particular behavior, but be aware, these are some examples where this doesn't make sense. And this is another signal that can represent that this does not make sense. So in that sense, we kind of add the user context, the user location, for example, to the mix, where the region of the user is. And that can sometimes correct some of that behavior, where the machine learns, like the model kind of when it's being trained, it learns that if the actual query is originating from that location, that's actually an exception. It should not map into that vector space or that location in vector space. It should map to that location.
Right. And so you have the equivalent of the quality raters who look at this, correct the data, send it back, and then you feed it back in as corrective data, but with geo and language specific tags on it?
Absolutely. So yes, so we have to utilize human intelligence in certain aspects to correct some of the behaviors, or like some of the data that we feed the machines. At the end of the day, you're trying to train it, and unless you correct it, it will never kind of train the right way. So human intelligence is very important. So kind of human annotators are very important to that kind of ecosystem. And as you mentioned, like adding these specific contextual signals about where the query originated from, what was the original language that the user kind of added in their preferences. Some of these signals really help kind of develop the right learning as such, and distill the right kind of learning that we want the machine to eventually pick up, and we want the model to actually represent.
But you use the word annotators. And so we've got Fabrice Canal putting all this stuff into a big index and annotating it all. And then when you're training the machine, you're annotating again. So the machine has an image with annotations on it, and masses and masses of annotations with all the little details and kind of possible interpretations.
Right. And of course, this is done, like the human intelligence is done at a very small scale compared to all the automated sort of annotations that are given. But it's very, very valuable that it's treated more as ground truth. There are stuff that is created kind of automatically, but there are things that we need to kind of trust more, so that we can learn really the right kind of behaviors and correct the incorrect behaviors that we do not want the model to kind of learn as such.
And so kind of the human annotations have a heavier weighting for the machine. You tell the machine, this is a human annotation, therefore you should take it more seriously than the automatic one that your friend Bingbot did earlier on.
Right. That's the gist of it. That the human corrected sort of annotations, or the added kind of signals that human intelligence provided, is weighted more, so that it actually corrects whatever kind of automated patterns that the machine is trying to learn.
Oh, how wonderful. I had another question as well, because Minaz Merchant, I talked to him a couple of years ago, and I said to him, well, of course you don't analyze every image. And then he said, but we do. And it seems to me like that's such a massive, massive amount of analysis, data, and resources. I was thinking you would sample the images and figure it out from there, but you actually analyze them all still?
Yeah, we can't do that, right? Because you need to understand, and you need to describe every like media content that you have, so that you can match it effectively and you can rank it effectively. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that.
But then there must be a point at which you kind of say, well, all of this isn't worth analyzing. I mean, some of it is just useless junk, tiny images and icons and whatever.
Yep. And we do that very early on in our kind of funnel.
Right.
So basically, like since you talked to Fabrice, so we have what we call an index, which is the actual repository of content that we essentially choose to include as our, how to say, our like universe of all the documents that we can eventually match to any user's intent, that we think is valuable enough for us to have it and to analyze it and to then use it to power user search or user kind of like knowledge seeking, any kind of knowledge seeking where they come to Bing and they're looking for some media content. But for us to select what type of media and what type of content we need to include in this repository, we do a lot of intelligence to decide these images are worthwhile, or these videos are worthwhile. They should be part of our index, and we should do all of the processing and all of the intelligence on top of them. And those are not very worthy of being part of our infrastructure or our index repository.
So am I right in thinking you've got basically a big initial sort, then you've got a big repository from which you extract, and then you do a pre-ranking, and then you do a re-ranking?
Yeah, that's like I guess that's the end-to-end. I guess it's similar to any search engine. There is like a discovery stage where we try to discover all the content that's out there, and then there's a selection stage where we try to kind of, out of everything that we know of, what is the the actual set that we want to select and include in our infrastructure. And then there is a processing stage where we, like, everything that we selected, we then want to analyze and annotate and understand more and do all kinds of processing on top of it, so it becomes servable in our infrastructure. And then we create our repository. We have our index ready, and then we wait, and we sit and wait for users to come. And now the users come in and they query us, or they want to find something, and so they enter whatever it is that they want to find. Either they use a textual representation of the query, or they use an image to search, and they want to find similar images, for example. So based on this information that they enter, then we do what's called matching, where we go in our repository, we try to look for like all the documents that potentially can be beneficial for this type of search that the users want. And then the final stage is ranking, in the sense that we match like hundreds and thousands of documents. Then what do we want to show on top? And that's what we try to rank and re-rank at several layers, so that we eventually like end up with the top 50 or 100 that is actually worth of users' time to actually look and see what and find what they're actually looking for.
So I oversimplified it terribly. Thank you. Do you have a concept of original source of image, i.e. you try to show where the image originates from, as opposed to somebody else who's copied it and put it on their own site?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. We try to do that. It's not a very easy problem, though, because let me try to explain why it's not easy. Because basically what you want to do is you want to find the absolute very first time that an image appeared anywhere on the web, that is like even a part similar to that image, in the sense that images can be cropped and can be changed slightly, and can be like taken from one context and stitched to another context, and so on. So it's non-trivial to actually take all of that out and then find like a piece of an image or a bit of an image that is similar to any other image that's out there on the web. It's just, we don't have the technology that allows us to do something like that at that scale today. The processing for doing something like that is tremendous, and we just don't have it right now. So we can do like the simplistic version of it, is that if they're exactly similar, then we can do that, because due to like already there are kind of similarity image similarity models that can identify exactly similar images, and then we can use the discovery time when we actually first discovered this image to try to approximate it and find something that is almost useful, but it's definitely not the right the end-to-end solution, or the actual solution for a problem like that. We're not there yet.
But yet you say, that means that's somewhere you are going. You're going to be able to identify that original image.
Not anytime soon. I just don't want people to think that this is a problem that can be solved in the next 6 months or the next year. I don't think so. Just because the processing is not there. We're not going to be able to kind of have the machines that are powerful enough to do that type of processing in an amount of time that's reasonable. That's one thing. Second thing is, as I mentioned, we have a finite repository. So no matter, we can we can look in our own repository, but this is no guarantee that there is no other image on the web that we just do not have in our repository. So again, that's also not a guarantee that it's not there. It's just that we don't have it. So how useful is that to users? That's also a question mark. So we're not there yet. Let me just put it in simple terms.
I like the fact that you said if we don't have it in the repository, obviously we can't analyze it. And you were talking about repositories just earlier, and I'd already forgotten about that. And that was it makes us realize how much we don't think about the details of this, and how much obviously you're digging down into all these different kind of problematic or problems that you need to solve along the way. And one of the other things, a couple of things, is number one, does Figure and FigCaption help using those semantic HTML5 tags around images and videos?
They definitely help. So the textual representation of the image is the easiest way for us to understand what is, in that image, right? So that is our, first and easiest signal to consume. And if that's of high quality, then it makes our lives a lot easier to try to match this content to a wider variety of user intents. But when that content is not available, and when it's not very descriptive of the content of the image and so on, this is when we have to go the extra mile and try to do all of this fancy processing and stuff to try to represent the images better and match them better, and so on and so forth.
So, I mean, kind of those alt tags and figures and FigCaptions are incredibly important, just to be sure that you're not left behind in that first lot that's sent to the bin, as it were.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I mean, this is the best and easiest way to get that image matched and ranked, well, before we even do anything else on the image itself. Just by having this available, you make it very easy for us to kind of use this image, match it, and rank it to anybody or any user that is looking for something similar.
Right. So to even get in the game, you have to do those incredibly basic things that people often forget and think, it's not very important. And in fact, it is to get in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it is important. It's not the end of the world if it's not there, because we try to do our best to still match the images and to try to understand what the image is about, even if these tags don't exist. I'm just trying to say, like, if they don't exist, this image is not going to be buried, or we're not just going to dismiss it just because this information doesn't exist. But if it exists, it's definitely better and easier to use. But if it doesn't exist, it's not the end of the world still.
Right. And what about the textual content around it within the paragraph? I mean, for example, if we've got a paragraph with a heading, and then there's another heading, do you just stop looking after that, after the new heading, thinking, well, that's a new topic, so it's only that chunk of paragraph that's going to apply?
It's not that clean. I mean, the processing is not that clean as you describe it, because the variety in the way that web pages are written is, I mean, it makes it very difficult for us to find a very clean cut to say that this is when the text that relates to the image or the video starts and ends, and this is what is meaningful to it, but anything else is not meaningful. We wish that was the case, but that's not the case. So then we have to do some logic and do some intelligence and learning, actually, to try to understand what is the bounding box, or like the surrounding text that is meaningful to the image, and what is the text that is really not meaningful to the image, or where do we go too far from the image that the text becomes meaningless as such.
But the text around it, you do an LP analysis of it to try to understand how it relates to the image.
Absolutely. It's very important as well. So, I mean, we use all kinds of information on the page, like even the page text itself, the title of the page, not just the text surrounding the image, but because, I mean, if you think of it, like the title of the page also relates to the image that is on it. So it has something to do with the image, and we want to capture anything that helps us describe the content of the image, or helps us understand what this image is about and how it can match users' intents effectively. So the content of the page is important. The URL of the page is important. The text, of course, that surrounds the image is important. The tags on the image themselves, like itself, is important. The other images on the page is important. The size of the image is important. Is it like is it very big and prominent on the page? And that also applies to videos, like even more prominently the image. Is the video very prominent on the page, or is like a small kind of side video, maybe that's part of an ad, or like part of a pop-up, or part of other part of the page that is not really the core of the page. And of course, the location on the page matters. Where is that particular media content? Again, is it like in the main part of the page, or is it on one of the sides? And so on. The number of images on the page. Is this a page that has a catalog, for example, of lots and lots of images, or is this a very kind of focused page that has only content about a particular image. So I mean, I'm just trying to talk about a few things, but there are so many of these signals that matter in search.
Right. Yeah. No. You went through the list. I'm sure the list is much longer, and it was already longer than I expected. Which moves us on to videos. Now, I've been wondering about the automatic subtitling, because sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't so good. How much does me doing manual subtitles that I then put in the video help, in the sense that that I've actually paid attention, I've made sure it does actually match what's being said, because all those ums and ahs and repetitions and unclear words and accents that aren't necessarily understandable.
Yeah, so video is a completely different beast than image, because, I mean, if you think of it, video has, in itself, the video itself is multimodal by definition. Like
Right.
the image only has like the picture, like the actual visual representation of a single frame, and some text surrounding it, whatever that text, the tags, the title of the page, whatever the text that we talked about. But video, you have that. So you have like the text surrounding it, the video title, some information and metadata about the video, and then you have the visual representation, which is a multi-frame type thing.
Right.
And you also have the audio, which is, whatever sound, either like the music or, whatever, like the aspects of the sound, or the actual text that is part of the speech that is in the video itself. So it's a much bigger, I wouldn't say problem, but a much bigger challenge to try to understand the actual content of the video. So going back to your question about, transcripts and whether transcripts, the quality of transcripts help. So for video specifically, we have to abide exactly by what the publisher allows us to have, in the sense that, for example, some publishers allow videos to be served or accessible in certain regions or certain locations, but not others.
Right.
And that's very important, for example, in international search, because we have to understand, we have to abide by whatever instructions the publisher has given us to allow access to their content. So that's one important thing. And in the same lines, so do they give us access to the transcripts or not? Some do and some don't. In the sense that, some allow us to have, they have an additional kind of transcript file that we're able to access and then use that to match and to rank basically the videos, and some don't. And in case that when they don't, then also we have to abide by the publisher's instructions, whether we can actually access the content of the video or we can't, because some publishers give us access to the content. We can actually access the media file itself and do some processing on it, and some don't. We actually can't do that. So I don't have a definite answer for you, because it's a little more complicated for video, because we have to just abide by whatever the publisher gives us access to. If they do give us access to the transcripts, then for sure we use it, and it becomes easier for us to match, because then it becomes another source of text that represents the content of the video right away.
So the transcript underneath the video, you would then take the video, look at the transcript, and use the transcript to say, to get the machine would then be thinking, well, yes, this confirms what I thought I had understood about this video.
Exactly. And then it also kind of tries to match it to a better representation of what it's about, based on the text that is, or actually the transcripts that describe the actual, whatever the people are saying or whatever they're discussing, the terms that they're using and so on. So it helps us to understand what this video and what parts of the video are actually about. So we can even kind of direct the users, and some other search engines do that too. They highlight, where should you start the video, where should you start looking into the video for the best, the most representative information that you're looking for. Transcripts allow that sort of thing.
Yeah, because I mean, the automatic subtitles, sometimes I look at them and you just think, well, that doesn't really make sense. So I was kind of thinking the idea that it's been done manually would be a help to the machine, in the sense that you would be able to, or it would be able to rely better or rely more on what it's getting there.
Yeah, for sure. The higher the quality of the content that we get, then the easier it is to rank the video and to represent, or actually the image too, and to represent the content, and the easier it is to match it to a wider variety of users and to rank it and surface it more effectively.
Right. I've got two more really quick. Well, one's a quick question. The other one's probably quite long. The first one is, I read an article in your blog and it says aesthetically pleasing for the user. You have a concept of aesthetically pleasing, because I got my ex-wife who's a graphic designer, to redesign Kalicube's entire kind of graphic universe.
Yeah.
And she gave us an idiot-proof set of colors that you could put together in any combination, it would always work. She just said, don't put more than 3 together, I think the rule was. And what has happened is that the images now come up in search much more than they ever did before. And I was thinking, oh, so the search engine has got a sense of aesthetic and taste.
Yeah, I mean, we're not like the machine, the models are not that smart. It's really, we try to represent what do humans find appealing, what do humans find attractive, and we try to simplify that into a set of features at the end of the day that, if they exist in a particular image, then we think this image, like people will, or like users will find it more attractive by nature, and will find it kind of overall more aesthetically pleasing compared to other images that do not have these particular features. The very simple ones that we can mention is, of course, size and quality. So if the size of the image is bigger, and if the image is higher quality, and there's a good kind of ratio between the two, then, compared to images that are smaller and that have less quality, then the bigger and higher quality images will be more attractive and more appealing.
Which is why you've now got Turing image super resolution, and you're putting it in
super res.
Edge.
Exactly. Then this brings us to super res, which we're very excited about, because this helps a lot in creating these aesthetically appealing or more attractive images that users would benefit more from and would get more information out of. And this applies actually in a wide variety of applications. Like, think, these small text-heavy documents where, you're looking for a particular form, or you're looking for, a particular type of receipt or whatever, and the image is like too small and you can't really figure out the details. But if we're able to super res it in a meaningful way, then you can really kind of try to like understand what is in actually the content of this image, and it becomes more useful.
Right, and that's being integrated into Microsoft Edge, so that in fact you're going to improve the quality of the image on the browser, in the browser.
Yeah, in the browser and on Bing as well. So just we try to make the image bigger and of higher quality using this concept of super resolution.
Brilliant. I think that's wonderful. Could I ask just one last question, which is the WebQA benchmark? And I read the WebQA benchmark is aimed at advancing this goal as a multi-hop, multi-modal open domain. And I've got no idea what that means. Could you just explain that to me, and then we can end?
Well, actually, I got no idea what that means either.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure what that means. I have to go back and read.
Okay, absolutely
it's
perfect.
It's a good thing that you actually asked me that, so I can figure it out myself and figure out what I'm missing.
I was hoping for this incredibly kind of geeky answer to end it all, where I'd be, but in fact,
I disappointed you. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. The whole conversation has been absolutely incredibly delightful and interesting, and I've got all the answers to all the questions I had.
Except the last one.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heba. We're going to now, and thank you everyone for watching. We're going to pass the baton to next week. We've got Mike Ulmer speaking about find the business story you need to tell every day for the rest of your life. I've talked to him already. He did this to me a couple of weeks ago, and my story apparently is Google and Bing are children. We need to learn how to teach them. That's the story I'll be telling for the rest of my life. So, you won't want to watch this every week, because that's what I'll be saying every week. So could you pass the baton to Mike Heba?
Mike, I mean, I'm so interested in that topic already. So I'm sure it's going to be a killer topic. Can't wait to kind of tune in and listen to what you have to say and develop my own story.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Heba.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Kalicube. It's all about your brand SERP.